We all have our own favorite long-running video game series, the kind that show no signs of slowing down, that bring people out in droves to GameStop midnight releases. But for every Mortal Kombat, Pokemon, or Fallout, there are games that have had sequels so lost to time that, well, they may as well be Black Panther changing his name to Black Leopard to avoid political controversy. Yeah, that's the thing that happened. Anyway, today I'll be covering 5 series that I think need to be brought back from the dead. I'd throw out a spoiler warning, but let's be honest, if you haven't played any of these ancient games yet, you're probably not going to. I'm Cody Cyberpunk, and welcome to today's episode of The Nerd's Opinion. Jak and Daxter was a platformer that came out in 2001 for the PlayStation 2, developed by Naughty Dog. It made its mark as one of the first majorly successful games for the console. The plot revolved around the young hero, Jak, traveling with his best friend Daxter to find a cure for him being turned into an Ottsel, and along the way, discover a conspiracy where the Dark Sage Gull, played by one of my favorite vocalists of all time, Dee Snider, was going to use dark energy called Eco to destroy all other sages and reshape the world. From there, the game got 2 sequels. Let's forget the other 3 games that came after, because let's be honest, they really don't matter. And while it kept true to its platforming roots, it got a whole lot crazier as the sequels came out, from adding guns and swearing to Michael Bay levels of explosions and scantily clad women. This game went dark and edgy years before Sega even considered Shadow the Hedgehog. However, with the last game being released in 2009 for the PS2 and being a failed attempt to reboot the series, fans haven't seen anything from Jak and Daxter in 10 years. With Naughty Dog seeming to only care about Uncharted and The Last of Us over the course of the last 12 years, what would be the best way for Jak and Daxter to come back? Well, a sequel following 2004's Jak 3 is one route we could go. An all-new adventure with Jak, Daxter, Kira, and Samos, that's one way to go about it. Especially since Jak 3 ends with Jak saying,
"I couldn't leave you, Dax. With all our adventures ahead, you wouldn't last a second without me."
However, I think there's a better way to go about it. With Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon both getting their own original trilogies remade from the ground up and selling like hotcakes, I think this could be the best way to drum up re-interest in Jak and Daxter. Give us PlayStation 4 graphics with the simple but incredibly intuitive controls of the PS2, and you'll see the game not only sell, but also be introduced to a new generation, since many of the kids playing it originally are all adults now with kids of their own. With a fan base that's practically doubled, you have a lot more incentive to continue the series after the 3rd game, and a much better chance at higher profits. So Naughty Dog, if you could stop sucking your dick long enough after the release of The Last of Us 2, maybe this could be your next project. This might be the most unexpected entry on the list, but I think after you hear what I have to say, you'll understand where I'm coming from. For those of you that don't know, Ghosts and Goblins was an arcade game developed by Capcom back in 1985 and was eventually ported to the NES. From there, the game has had multiple sequels, including Ghouls and Ghosts, Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Ultimate Ghouls and Goblins, and several others. Now, as a series known primarily for its incredible difficulty, I think it would make the best comeback it possibly could right now, since we seem to have an obsession with super difficult games like Dark Souls and Cuphead, which will probably be the only time you ever hear both those games mentioned in the same sentence. Even though its most recent game in the series was in 2010, it was for iOS. In fact, with 7 games in the main series, Super Ghouls and Ghosts was the last one to be on a major console, which was the SNES back in 1991. Every sequel since has been mobile, and some of them even being Japanese only, meaning for a lot of fans, it can feel like we haven't had a true sequel in 30 years. So, why bring back from the dead a game that hasn't truly had a main game in nearly 3 decades? Well, that's easy. Right now, the gaming industry seems to be going through a phase of 2D platformers being cool again. When you look at the massive success of games like Shovel Knight, Mario Maker, and Ori and the Blind Forest, then you know bringing back this 2D classic side-scroller with unimaginable difficulty, fun bright colors, and a great organ-based background music would be a surefire hit. Plus, these games were never story-heavy, so you really don't have to worry about finding a reason for the game to continue a narrative. Just slap on a generic Save the Princess cutscene at the beginning, and we're good to go. Hell, Capcom already put out another 2D side-scroller in the middle of last year with Mega Man 11, so is it really so far-fetched to bring these ghouls back from the grave? here, we'll find both the only racing and Nintendo title on the list. Wave Race! No, I'm just joking, but seriously, I would love to see a Wave Race sequel. No, I'm talking about FZero. Sure, maybe not as well known as Super Mario Bros. Or The Legend of Zelda, but FZero is a big part of Nintendo's history, dating all the way back to 1990 on the SNES, and had great moments of popularity to boot, with the series mascot Captain Falcon appearing in literally every Super Smash Bros. Game, and even being one of the few Nintendo IPs to get an animated series, alongside Kirby, Pokemon, Mario, Zelda, and even Captain N. So, if the series is one of Nintendo's staples, why haven't we seen a console game since 2003's F-Zero GX on the GameCube? Or even a handheld game since 2004 with the Japan-only F-Zero Climax? Well, unlike the previous entries on this list, F-Zero is probably the most likely to still get a sequel in the future, with Shigeru Miyamoto saying in 2015 that the series isn't dead, and that a new installment of the franchise could be possible if Nintendo were to develop a controller interface for one of their upcoming titles. Well, who knows if the Switch could be the console they officially do this for, but come on, Nintendo, it's been 15 years, give us something! You may think you know JRPGs, but if there is one thing that Final Fantasy, Earthbound, and Dragon Quest fans all agree on, it's that you don't fuck with Chrono. See, even with the least amount of games in a franchise on this list, they definitely have one of the longest lasting legacies. With only 2 games in the series, and 3 if you count a Japanese text-only game, but who does? It still manages to gain notoriety as being some of the greatest JRPGs ever made. With Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross being released in 1995 and 2000 respectively, I think we're due for a third game. Oddly enough, it seems like at one point there may have been plans for a third game, as in 2001, series publisher Squareco, before they were Square Enix, trademarked the names Chrono Break and Chrono Break. Pronounced the same, spelled different? I don't know what that's all about. However, said trademark was never acted on and dropped in 2003. Now this seems odd considering that in the same year, Chrono Trigger was Square Enix's 12th best-selling game of all time, Chrono Cross not far behind at 24th. We live in a time when JRPGs are bigger in the West than they've ever been, so sometimes the point of feeling like there's an oversaturation in the market. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't have another Chrono game, and what's Square Enix really have going on at this point? After canceling the DLC for Final Fantasy 15 and finally dropping Kingdom Hearts 3 after 14 years, they can't have that much on their plate. If anything, now is the perfect time to start work on a new Chrono, seeing as everything they've been touching has turned to gold lately. And if they can get Akira Toriyama of Dragon Ball and Dragon Quest fame to come back and do the art like they did for Chrono Trigger, they're going to get paid! In fact, why am I not the marketing director for Square Enix? Numero uno, the big number 1. No honorable mentions on this list, we're getting right down to it. Silent Hill. They may have had a game more recently than anybody else on this list, with Silent Hill Downpour being released only 7 years ago in 2012. But that's still 7 years. Not only that, but since 2012, 2 different Silent Hill games have been cancelled. 2012's Silent Hill The Box, which was being produced by the now defunct Silicon Knights, and the infamous 2015 cancelling of Silent Hills, helmed by Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro, also starring Norman Reedus. Silent Hill's legacy is just as long-lasting as Resident Evil's in terms of bringing survival horror games to the mainstream, but unlike Resident Evil, Silent Hill has failed to wow audiences in the recent years. The last 3 games in the series, Homecoming, Shattered Memories, and Downpour, all got average reviews at best and fell to the wayside when people found other horror games such as The Evil Within, Outlast, and Alien Isolation. That's really sad. I'd say off all the games on the list, Silent Hill's fall from grace is the biggest tragedy. To be one of the series that helped launch a genre, only to be looked upon with modern-day mediocrity, isn't the fate Silent Hill deserved. But it's what it got. And with Capcom's recent Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 2 remake being incredible successes after the failures of Resident Evil 6, it's proof that horror games can learn from their mistakes to become commercial and critical successes. So Konami, give Silent Hill the same chance. Revive the series. This whole video is called Video Game Franchises That Need to Come Back from the Dead. What's more befitting of that than a horror title? Give us emotional and mental masochists what we want, which is fear and love all at the same time. Curling up on the couch with the lights off, reliving the terrifying moments of our youth as we run from Pyramid Head and fight off nurses. That's all you have to do, Konami. I've gotta say, I've made myself sad, thinking about what could have been, but probably never will be. Anyway, if you really enjoyed this episode, please, once again, like, comment, and subscribe. In the comments, feel free to tell me what games you think should be brought back from the dead, or feel free to tell me why you disagree in the comments. Once again, I'd like to ask you to check out Drinking Games 2113 on Twitch, streaming every Saturday and Tuesday. Link will be in the description below. And remember, nerd's the word.